Today we have Michael McNeil from Digital Oasis. They got their start off as a development shop who working with clients the need for teaching people how to use JIRA, do good project management within application development. Kind of led to them getting involved as a JIRA expert or Atlassian expert, and they now provide training classes all around the United States to companies and to organizations for training. So today we're going to talk about enhanced productivity, taking advantage of our filters, Agile boards, and dashboards to be able to get the information out that we need out of JIRA. And so I don't want to waste too much time. I want to give them maximum time. So Michael, thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. Just give a real quick about me. He mentioned it. I do teach on project management and the Atlassian product suite all around the country. I'm spending about 5 of the next 8 weeks out in San Francisco and San Jose working with a number of organizations. And it's been a pretty interesting transition. I've been in project management for about 20 years, over 20 years, and I'm getting old. And seeing the transition from traditional project management through the introduction of PMOs and those kinds of environments, and the convergence then with Agile processes and the tension within organizations for Agile software teams and more traditional project management-based reporting. So that's led to a lot of interesting engagements for us, working with a number of large companies, production teams, engineering teams, to build out environments using primarily the Atlassian product suite. And we get involved in both the JIRA side of things plus the continuous integration and deployment side as well. I run a custom software development company also, Oasis Digital. We build mostly these days single page web apps with Node or Java on the back end and Angular, and we've even got some Angular 2 projects going right now. So I also write quite a bit on a topic. I have a blog I have listed there at mcneil.com. I also love building furniture, so if anybody wants to talk woodworking, let me know. I built these for my grandkids for Christmas. So quick agenda. I'm going to give you just a couple minute version of how to rapidly set up a sandbox on your own. All 4 of these are going to kind of be mashed together. So we're kind of going to rotate through. I've got a live sandbox environment that I set up and populated with a bunch of data that we're going to work with to work through filters, some Agile boards and dashboards from different perspectives. Real quickly, a couple minutes on rapid test environment setup. Atlassian will allow you to spin up a free cloud instance without putting in any credit card information or anything, and it can stay alive for a couple weeks. We use this in our classes. When somebody comes to our classes, they'll spin up their own environment and learn to configure something from scratch. And then we also have a free data generating tool that we built that will populate an instance using a JSON file with years of data, user comments, versions, multiple projects, many users. It allows you to literally within 10 minutes spin up an instance that looks like it's been used by a couple hundred people for 6 months, a year, etc. on a bunch of projects. That allows you to actually run some of the things that I'm going to show you now against real data. Because if you spin up an empty environment, you can only look at data that's been entered in the system. So if you're trying to write a filter, you're trying to understand and build an Agile board, if you don't have anything in the environment, it's kind of useless, kind of pointless. So those are the websites for that, and I can provide those later also. But JIRA Jumble is what we built as the free data generator, and then you can get the free software for the free instance from Atlassian. So as a foundation stepping forward, it's important to understand how issues are stored in JIRA. They are not stored in various tables based on projects, etc. It's every issue in a JIRA instance is in one big bucket. So if you have access, as represented by this gray area, to 3 projects, say the entire project here, most of a project here, and part of a project here, you have the ability to slice across this data across all those projects in whatever way you want. And this can be extremely useful because most people are involved in multiple projects in a JIRA instance. Very rarely are you just involved in one. It can happen, of course, but usually it does not work that way. So any questions on this before I jump in? Does this make sense to everybody? Okay. What I want to do now is jump over to the system that I set up. And I want to start out using this search for issues button. And what this does is this should immediately show me when I click on search for issues, it should show me everything within that grayed out space. So I should be able to see on this list every issue that I have the rights to see in the system. Doesn't matter what project it's on. So you can see if I click down here on the projects, these are all the projects. This is populated with what I am able to see. So I've got a whole bunch of projects here that were automatically generated. I can see all the issue types represented in all those projects. I can see all the statuses from all the various workflows in these projects. In this case, they're all the default workflow. And I can see all of the assignees. So say I have a team that's operating and I'm working with that team of peers or of people working under me, then I can see all of their issues as well. So I start out with this big pile. And what people usually don't understand is that when you can create visualizations in JIRA out of the box very simply that cut across projects that compare and contrast two very different things. So for example, maybe you have a complete set of issue types, you have a different set of issue types on one project than the other, and you maybe have a project tracking kind of item. Maybe one's an Agile, so you're using stories on one, and another one you have maybe you're using the new feature issue type to maintain to understand what your progress is like on that. So you can sort here by both of those, and then have a list of everything from both of those issue types, and then visualize them together to be able to contrast and see the progress you're making on both of them at the same time. This can apply to your personal. We'll show some filters here in a second. This can apply to your personal productivity. So you can have issues that you're tracking the progress of in your personal boards that span, your administrative tasks, your project issues across projects, your emergency issues that might be assigned if you're a second-tier support person on a project, etc. That can all be pulled together into the same board, and the process you go through is first you have to filter out to exactly what you want. So over here, I've created some filters on the left here. You can see them in my saved filters. So let's start out. Let's say I want to look at just a single project. So I'm responsible for this project. This one's randomly titled Absurd Notebook. I've got 84 issues in this project. I can scroll down, I can see all the various issues, I can sort them by assignee, reporter, etc. And this particular filter is then, I've saved it previously, but I could also make a slight modification and do a save as here. One small side note that I'll make is it's usually important for people to share filters with others. So say you want to share something within a team, put together something you want to share. This button does not do what you think it does, if you've ever tried it. It is not how you share filters. It is a poor choice in the UI in many people's opinions. In order to share a filter on this screen, you have to go into the details, edit permissions, and then through that process you can add a share. So I've got this filter. I've been able to modify it because I can select issue type, statuses, assignees. I can also go through, and if there's any custom fields, I can search for those. On the screen, I can also change what's displayed. So let's say, for the sake of this discussion, that the resolution is not important for this screen, and I do want to add effects versions. So I add that, make that change, and now it's changed the listing on the screen. I can reorder those columns, I can sort by columns, and if I save it at that point, it'll remember where I'm at as a user when I come back to it. And this can be very useful because it gives you a quick click. So I've got a whole bunch of filters here, and I can go through and I can come back to this one as much as I want, and I can click through and I can see my various filtering of these systems. So what I've set up here is I've set up a single project. I've set up a single project, just my issues. No, that's not the right one. I'm not seeing this very well. Yeah, single project, my issues. I've got a single project for a subset of the team on a project. I've got a multi-project, small team. We'll be talking about these. I've got multi-project for a single user. I've got all projects, many users. And then I've got another one that cuts across a little different direction, which is bugs across any project that need attention, meaning that they haven't been touched in a certain period of time. And I'll be showing you that in a minute. So looking at this, going back to the single project, who here has any familiarity with SQL? Okay, well, if you have familiarity with SQL, then you will want to hit the advanced button, and this should start looking familiar. Okay, there's and if you click on the help icon over on the right, there are differences between what they refer to as JQL and SQL. But if you click on this icon, this will take you to some pretty extensive documentation that is pretty well maintained. That'll tell you about the operators and how to put together some complex examples. I will go ahead and click on bugs needing attention because I want to walk through this. So what I've done here is I've created a query that looks across all my projects and anything that is assigned the issue type of bug. It's in a certain set of statuses, and its updated date is older than 2 weeks. So this gives me a subset of items that technically should be given attention. And so I use that kind of as a principle for some of the things that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. Monitor my time so I don't run too far. So any questions on this? I'm running through filters a whole lot faster than I do in our class or in a normal presentation because I got to roll through this. Any questions on filters at this point? Should I even ask for questions? Is anybody ever going to ask a question?
I have lots of questions.
Okay, all right, gotcha. Do you have one now?
More specific, but how do you know what fields are available to query on? That's one of the biggest challenges that I've had.
Well, it'll actually give you a list when you start typing. It'll actually show you all the fields that are available. But a quick, easy understanding is if you go back to basic, if you click on more, it'll show you all of the fields here that are available to you. That's a quick, easy. But as you're typing, it'll actually suggest to you what your operator options are. And if you start typing, for example, A, it'll give you and instead of and or. And so what, any other questions before I roll on? Yeah.
One field I always have to update in my filter is whenever I use a sprint, I always want to go for the active sprint, and I always have to update it for the active one. Is there a way to build a query that always focuses on the active?
What we tend to do, and this may be something for you guys to consider, because of some of those limitations, we actually went to our own sprint field. We actually, in our teams, we actually have our own field. We got away from using the ones that were built into JIRA. But I know some limitations here that are frustrating is you can't search effectively and find all issues that are linked. You can't do a filter for linked issues or for issues that are blocking. You have to use a plugin and a scripting plugin to do that. Okay, so what I've got set up here now is I've got a set of filters. And as I click through them, you can see there's 200 issues on this all projects, many users. I have a multi-project, single user. I've got 29 issues assigned to me there. I've got a small team. There's 69 issues. I've got a single project. There's 84 issues. So I've got this main store where I have 1,500 issues into some bite-sized chunks that matter to me. And that's kind of the key. If you start here, build chunks that you can actually monitor. Lists of 1,000 items cannot be monitored. Even lists over 100 items just cannot be monitored very well. It's really important to have some of this data broken down into ways that you can visualize, ways that you can pattern match. So when I go to the visualizations, when I build dashboards, I'm building things that I can see issues at a glance. And so, and I'll show you some of those and some of those parameters I look for in some of these various gadgets on dashboards and in the Agile boards, etc. But if you build filters, and it takes a little tweaking to get comfortable with it, but once you start getting things into bite-sized chunks, putting them up on boards, you can then kind of have it over in a window and you kind of glance over at it every once in a while and you can see something that's important. You can remind yourself of what's important, help yourself stay on task, etc. We use it extensively within our organization, and a lot of our customers do as well. So with that, everybody should, in your environment, I'm going to start with Agile boards, and then I'm going to go to dashboards from there. Agile boards are driven from a filter. They are, whether it's you assign it for a project, if it's assigned to a project, it's a project-based filter. If you assign it to one of your filters, then it's driven there. And you have control over a lot of parameters of how this is displayed. Now, you have to understand, if the filter is shared with somebody, that person can also see your Agile board. So if you want an Agile board that you're going to create in a certain way and you're going to use terminology that you don't want everybody to see, find the filter that interests you, make a copy of it, and then make your board from the copy so that the sharing is not automatically connected. A couple of versions ago, they didn't used to have that linked, but now an Agile board is automatically shared with anybody that can see the filter. So in this environment, I've got, this is a Kanban board. It's a style board that is very configurable, but it does have a couple of key limitations in Atlassian's implementation of it. And the first one is that the columns are organized by statuses. So everybody here is familiar with a workflow, right? So you've got your workflow. It might have 12 statuses in it. If I have 12 statuses, I choose which column each status is going to be represented by. It's usually typically good practice to go left to right, unless you're in another part of the world where you want to go right to left. But you can start by, you can do either way, but you can start by, you typically go left to right, and it's the beginning of the life of a particular issue to the end of the life of an issue at the end. So we have the ability to configure that. There's also, we'll be talking about, I'm going to run through these all individually, but we have the, you have the statuses in the columns. You've got the ability to do swim lanes. You can control what goes on the issue cards. You can control some quick links at the top. Like for example, here I'm on a single project board, but I want to sub-filter to just my issues. Okay, I want to see the ones that I've also recently updated. So maybe I want to see the ones that the team has recently updated. Well, I'm the only one that's updated something, so. But you can set these up, and so all these things are configurable, even colors on the cards, as I'll show you in a minute. And these can all be done via queries. So what I was just showing you with the advanced filtering applies to configuration of these boards as well. So when I go into the settings here, I can see my filter query right here. I can select a different one if I want to use it, and I can, change the board name, etc. That's gonna whatever, and then you can also affect the sharing of the filter from here. So you don't have to go back and find the filter and share it. You can actually, it'll click you through right here. What's important here is we'll go to the columns. I'm going to pass on the column constraints because most people don't use that feature. But this is where you select, and it's drag and drop. You can add more columns, etc. You can add as many as you want. And you can drag things around, and you could make this pretty explicit. I'm going to go ahead and delete these and leave the 3. I've got... that's interesting. I've not seen that UI behavior before. But this is where you can drag and you can move around. If I wanted resolved to still be considered in progress because we're doing a validation process, so it's not really done until it's actually in production, I could move that back to this column so I can see that that's part of my work that still needs to be done. So swim lanes, this is where it gets interesting. You can,
Go back
yeah.
to the screen and kind of explain the days in column.
Oh, that is, so this checkbox right here, this is an old original feature. People either love it or hate it, but it gives you this little dot indicator at the bottom of a card. And essentially, if something has been sitting in that status for a long time, it has more dots. It doesn't give you any real data, it just gives you an indicator. This item was moved. I'm gonna go ahead and move this guy over here. I'm gonna go ahead and start progress. So now he doesn't have dots anymore because it's brand new in this status. These, according to the system I imported, have been sitting in this status for some time, and it does vary how many dots it move across that. That is the setting we were just looking at, which is the days in column. So when looking at swim lanes, you can automatically base swim lanes on assignees, on stories, epics, or on queries. They added this ability for queries to specifically allow you to essentially do almost anything with it. So these can be very complex. People will automatically make all of the swim lanes related to each other. That's not necessarily the way it needs to happen. You might have some task on a certain project that might be in an expedite row or some separate type of tracking mechanism. You can do that. So like for example, on this board, I have everything related to my team. I'm saying it's a hardware team. This is bogus because it was just bogus data that came in. If anybody knows what DevX is, then I'm really sorry. But then I've also got an expedite swim lane. So when I go back to my board, I've got everything associated with hardware in this swim lane here. I've got everything that's a major priority here, and then everything else is down below. So it's a quick organizing mechanism for that. It doesn't have to be used for stories. It doesn't have to be used for sprints. It doesn't have to be used for features. It can be used for anything you want, in essence. So if something shows up in multiple queries, so say you've got multiple queries going on in swim lanes, it will show up in the top swim lane. It will not show up in the additional swim lanes. It shows up in the top one first. So that is a quirk that can catch people out at times trying to use this for very complex things. I know they're working on a board specifically designed for JIRA Core, which is more business centric. That'll have a lot more capabilities related to the configurability that won't have some of the restrictions that are tied to its software development origins. So that'll even allow us to do even more with the board when that gets released this year. So any questions so far on this? I'm rolling through this pretty fast.
Explain that release link over there. You may have alluded to it. Can you explain what that is?
If everything is set up properly, when I release this, I should be able to put in a version, and that'll create an ad hoc version, and it should, and it didn't on this because it's not configured right, on all of our boards, then it removes it off the board.
Just the things that are done?
Yeah, it takes anything that's in a particular, it's in a status, resolves it, and drops it off the board in our setups. This one isn't set up to do that. And that's a good way to use it. Is that how you guys are set up? Do they drop off the board when you resolve them, when you release them? So that's how it should operate. I set this up in an airport in LAX, so forgive me. It's not completely configured yet. So the rolling on here, a couple other important aspects that you can configure is you've got these quick filters that go along the top. Those are query based, so they can be anything that you want, and I'll show you some examples of some more interesting ones here in a little bit. You can change the card colors. So in this case, maybe I'll say we'll do a colors based on issue types. I can select my colors. I can do that normal color picker. And now when I go back to the board, based on the issue types, there's a small swatch of color on the left. It used to make the whole card ugly. Now they've made it a little more subtle with their styling design. It's a lot more usable. But we actually use color for a specific purpose on one of our most important boards in the organization, which is tracking all of our training classes. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in the final section of this. So going back to the board, I can configure those card colors. We're going to look at quick filters a little bit more. I can also specifically add any of my custom fields to the card. So maybe I care who the creator was. I'll add that. I can add up to 3 fields. They used to have it unlimited, and you'd be able to make these cards that were about that tall. It's kind of silly. They've restricted it nicely at this point. So if I go back to the cards now, on each of these, it'll show who created, who's creating the issues. So I created all of these issues because I imported the JSON file. So, yeah, yeah, priority is already on here. That's this guy right here. That's the arrows. But you can also put the written form in there as well if you wanted it. Yep, any of your custom fields, any of the standard fields are pretty much available to you. So you've also got a whole nother view here, and let me show this to you. When you click on an item, many of you that have used these will already know this. Our guys tend to use this as their primary point of reference for a project. When you click on the item, it'll bring up this separate pane. You can control what fields are displayed there as well by modifying the issue detail view. This is the only screen that is editable by somebody without admin rights. So although you can configure the create, the view, the edit screen, this is the one that you can get to that you can actually change your interface with very easily. So if I go back over here, I go to issue detail view, I can see all the fields. I can reorder them if I want. I can add more date fields, more people fields, linked issues. Any of my fields are available to me. All my custom fields, everything. So that is the configuration of a board. So before I run through the boards that I created and talk to you about some of the various permutations of it, any questions on the configuration of these things? Everybody good? Yeah.
Is there any way without using a release to filter the downtime to get cards or issues off of it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's actually a pretty common use. It's very easy. Let me show you down here. You can have your main filter bring a pile of issues in, and then under the general selection here at the bottom, you can add a sub filter here so you can filter things out. Here's what's important about that. Curating saved filters on a system can become an issue when you have thousands of users. If every user has 25 filters and you have 1,000 users, that's 25,000 filters. And then if each of those, if the staff turns over at a rate of 10% per year, think about what's being left behind over the years based on all those users. So if 100 users are leaving behind 25 filters each every year, that can make a mess. What you can do here is you can have a general filter that takes it down to a list of issues, and then say you're building Agile boards for a team of 12. You could have the main filter capture all 12, and then you can make copies of the same board and then sub-filter to each individual user. So you've been able to spawn then 12 boards from a single filter instead of making 12 filters. So there's some best practices that you can apply here to improve the situation for the admin side of the organization. Because when you add too many custom fields, if you have too many filters, it does slow a system down. Anything else you want to add, Christian, on that?
We do already have thousands of filters. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I know organizations where they have somebody almost full-time maintaining all the shared filters and everything because they have so many. And they're just constantly going through looking for duplicates and deleting and just to keep the system optimized. But that's for an enormous system with millions and millions of issues in it. So, all right. So any other questions on the basic configuration of these animals? We good? All right. So what I want to do is I want to look at a few of these boards. And we've looked at a single project board. So on this project, I can see the various issues. There's only a couple of us working on this board. I can see the progress. I've got these expedited issues at the top. I can see what's a particular component. And then if I want to just kind of monitor what's going on with the rest of the project, I can. I can switch gears. And if I go to my view of the world across multiple projects, then I can see in just a flat view, what am I working on across all these projects? What have I accomplished? In this case, I have them still, they haven't dropped off the board. And I can kind of prioritize my work. I can see, oh, I've got I would, if I saw this on one of our guys' boards, I'd say, you're not managing your work very well. You shouldn't have more than 4 or 5 issues in progress at any one time. Otherwise, you're never going to get anything done, or one of them's going to sit there for weeks, and you're never going to crank through it. So I'm breaking my own rule here. I've got 10 in progress and 9 waiting to be done. But I can see this across everything that I'm assigned items on. This is across all projects. I also have a board I set up for the issue of something that's time critical. So on this board, I've set it up to where these are all the bugs that haven't been touched in the last 2 weeks. They're going to be user reported issues or customer reported issues or issues found in development. And I can see this board by individual. And I've got a separate column here that's a little bit different. It's what's recurring versus what's just in to do and in progress. And here, I don't even have the resolved and done showing up on this. What I care about on this board is what's new that's come in, what's being worked on currently, and what keeps coming up. If it keeps coming up, why haven't we solved it? Maybe it's something that recurs from version to version because somebody keeps making the same mistake in their approach to a problem. And so I can see what's by person who's assigned to what progress they're in, and I can just monitor this progress. So I might have something like this up in a tab on a window on the side. I just kind of look at it day to day and see where things are at. As things are updated, the board, every time the browser refreshes, it'll update, or you'll get a little notification in the lower right saying the board's been updated. Click the button. All that I'm going to talk about when we get to dashboards, because that's all oriented around keeping the load on the system reasonable. Go ahead.
When I look at this, it seems like you could have accomplished the same end that you're doing with swim lanes with sub-filters, and it's just a matter of tomato, of how you want to slice and dice this.
Right. If I can sort it, what I do is if I can sort it by status, I put it in columns. I don't waste my swim lanes on status because I'm forced to use status for my columns. It's the only thing it's all I can do to organize.
I was talking more about the sub-filters. You could have had each person's name as a sub-filter, and that way you could have done
On a separate board?
Quick filter.
Oh, and a quick filter. Yeah, it's in this case, yes. There's a reason why I didn't do it in this case, and that's because there's so many of them. I would have ended up with too many to go across, and it would start to take up screen real estate. So there's different approaches, but yes, you can add them to the quick filters up top. And the recently updated obviously doesn't apply to this. I don't have a good quick filter set up for this one because the only reason they're on this board is because they haven't been recently updated. So
just to add on the quick filter topic though, if you do have a lot of quick filters, JIRA does restrict it just to 2 lines, and then it
Yeah.
links and says show more. then it'll expand it, and then show less and collapse it.
Right.
So it is limited to 2 lines.
Yep. The other aspect of the quick filters that does apply is they are toggles, and they can be cascaded. So if you have, like, I'll show you on our training board, you can sort by type of class, and then whether it's public or private. And you could, if I set it up in a certain way, I could set it by what city. You know, you can cascade that filtering to take your board and shrink it down to a small list. So that's this board. In fact, let me go back over here. And I am going to jump. I want to talk about this since we're on boards before we go to dashboards. Get this guy up here. So this is a copy of our training board. I can't bring up our production system. We've got too many NDAs in place with too many various companies. But this is a dummy training board that mimics our normal tracking board for our training projects. And I want to bring this up because you can see across the top I have a regular set of quick filters. I can sort it by public or private, and these are all cascading, and they're all very useful to our team. And then we use the quick visual of color here to indicate how firm a date is. So if a date has just been offered, then it's red. If it's been penciled in and held, then it's yellow. If it's confirmed and it's hard on the calendar, then it's green. So we have, I don't know, about 9 instructors right now that are teaching classes, and a few other people that are secondary instructors on classes. And so they can go to this board, they can filter it for their classes, and then they can see real quickly what do they need to book travel for, where's the class at, what are they doing. They don't have to talk to anybody, they don't have to do anything, and everybody shares this same board. They can also see what kind of companies are rolling through the process of being talked to, of inquiring of us. We don't have any outbound sales. Everybody's calling us. It's a very pleasant position to be in. And so we're talking to these companies. We're navigating through our schedule, what their needs are. Are we a good fit? Do we have the instructor available in the timeline they want? All those things. And they can see these starting to emerge. And so we might assign them to an instructor based on the particular industry that the customer is in, or the makeup of the development team, or like we do development-based classes as well as the project management and JIRA classes. So we might take a look at what their particular environment is. If they're coming from a .NET perspective versus a Java perspective, I'll have different instructors work with the teams, depending on what kind of a problem they're trying to solve as an organization. And so then they can see what's coming. And so there's a value here in communicating the future, not just communicating the progress. So being able, you can take a look at your boards, and sometimes there's value for you to know what's on the horizon. A good example is if you're in an engineering team and something's been proposed by somebody in management as a possible new initiative to develop a whole new aspect of something, then it's good to know that that's out there in the being approved process, and you can monitor that on the board along with your regular work, because it could potentially have a big impact on your team, and it might cause you to reshuffle priorities within your team or within your workload to be ready for that when it comes. So you know kind of what's coming in the future along with your work and the progress going by. And that's a real asset to these Agile boards, because you've got the flexibility in the filters. You can have those two lists come together in the same one. You can display disparate issue types from different projects, and you can see them kind of on a different axis. You can see, is it going to be real or not versus what part of the workflow is this in, and how done is the item. Does that make sense? Any questions on this before I roll on to dashboards? Oh, crud. I am taking too long. So I'm going to buzz past questions. All right, I want to get to dashboards. These are important. I've built 2 dashboards here from 2 different perspectives. The first one is from my perspective. And there's typically 40 to 50 gadgets available to folks when they build a dashboard. One of the most important ones is you can take that Agile board that we just did and you can put it in a gadget on a dashboard. So that same Agile board, it's not as clickable as the other one, but that same Agile board is available to be displayed for view purposes on this board. So also on this dashboard, I've got a calendar showing issues and their due dates, showing versions. I just released this version today. That's the one I just made. If I click over into March, I see I have some due dates on some other items here. I can kind of see this on a calendar basis. I can also see issues that are assigned to me across all the projects, and I have customized which columns show on this particular filter list. You can select that, and these are all of these are based on individual filters. So if I go into, I can see right here, single project, my issues, that's the single project, my issues filter. If I go in and I edit this guy, I can select a different filter, and I can go see all my filters that I've made, and I can change how these are configured. So I can have two of the same widget or same gadget next to each other on the same dashboard, showing two different filtered lists. Great for comparison purposes. So as I roll down through here, I can see the assigned to me. I can see now on my board, I actually care about what percentage of the issues across all the projects I'm involved in are assigned to me. Am I getting too much of the load? Am I not getting enough of the load? You can start to see that and see that relative to others. Another important aspect of all these gadgets is I can click into these. These are live. So I can click into this and I can go straight in and it'll take me directly to the issue list. If it's another type of gadget where there's individual issues represented, if I click on it, it'll take me directly to the issue page. So, like for example here, this will take me directly into the issue page, the issue view. So I can also I might have my favorite filters here. So if I want to be able to quick access, and then it tells me how many issues are filtered with that filter right here. An important one that people overlook is, say I'm involved in a bunch of projects. I can have all those projects listed here, and there's about 3 levels of detail that can be selected. But here's what's very valuable. I can go in on any project, and I can go click the calendar, and I can see when all the issues are due on that project. So I can click through, and I can see that, and I can also, I'm gonna load up. I can also go through here and I can see some specific sub-filters of that project with one click. And some of them are quite useful. So I also have the traditional, everybody should know, if you're in software development, should know what this is, the created resolve chart. And I find these extremely useful because it shows me the created issues and the number of them versus the resolved issues. And I can see here on this project, the team's falling way behind. I added some more resources to the project, or people got it in gear and figured out what they were doing. Now all of a sudden we're keeping up. And I've got lots of samples of this that I go over in the classes where we've got some long-standing 10+ year projects. You can see over time when the project's been in trouble, when there's been too many people on the team and we started to catch up. You can see that kind of develop over time. You can also see what a greenfield project looks like. It'll start out with nothing, and then it'll shoot into action, and then it'll go into more of a operating and maintenance mode. It's kind of an interesting exercise to look at 20 different projects and see their shape and how they come together. And then I also might have, this is time to first response. I've got activity stream. The other one I want to show real quick before everybody has to walk out of here is dashboard related to a team. There's some interesting aspects of this. This first one here is a bubble chart, and this shows data across multiple axes at the same time. But essentially what I can see from looking at this is my bugs needing attention. And I can see that the important ones are red, The size of the dot is how much activity there is on the item. So these ones at the bottom, I see we're doing a good job because they're all green. And it's not really much of a surprise that the most important ones are the ones that are taking us the longest to get solved. So I can see that up and to the right, I've got some unhappy stuff happening here. And I could actually click in and see the issue and look at it. So this has some interesting uses. I can also do a two-dimensional filtered statistics. So here I'm looking at my particular assignees and the progress of their bugs all in a table. So I can choose my data, my columns, etc. that I want to show on this. Here's a pie chart again by assignment, a calendar for all of the teams and all of the projects, and I can click in and I can see each one. I often use this. I'll create a calendar for recently updated items, so then I can see on a calendar what items were worked on what day. Not so I can harass the guys, but so that when we're talking, when a client's calling, they're saying, you know, why isn't this getting done? I can look and I can see, oh, the reason it's not getting done because nobody's working on it. So we can go through it because if nobody's updating it, if nobody's committed any code, nobody's made any comments, then we're not even looking at the thing. So it's a quick access for that. You know, bar chart or for statistics and various statistics. Here I'm comparing the same, well, here it is, across a single project compared to all projects. So I can see that I have 28% bugs on my project, and across all projects the average is 25%. So you can see differences between how one project is performing versus a bunch of others. And then that same chart again, another pretty basic stuff, and then I might have another Agile wallboard showing at the end. So any other questions on dashboards real quick? I know I blasted through those really fast. Yeah.
How did you explain what the balls are here with
The bubble chart? Okay. So yeah, this one takes a little bit of time to grasp. The axis over here is comments. The axis here is how many days are open. The size of the bubble is related to the activity, and the color of the bubble is related to the priority. So if it's red and it's big, that means there's a lot going on. If it's green and it's small, it means it's unimportant and nothing's been happening to it. So.
Quickly show how to share a dashboard.
Yes. Thank you. Oh, yeah, important note. If you're going to share a dashboard, every filter on the dashboard also has to be shared. But you can share the dashboard under Tools, Share, but then any filter that you're using on that dashboard also needs to be shared, or they're going to get an error on that particular gadget.
And then how would people go about finding shared dashboards?
You can go to manage. If you go to dashboards, manage dashboards, it'll show you a list. Here, it doesn't it only shows you your favorites, but if you click search, leave it empty and search, it'll show you all the dashboards in the system.
I knew the answer. I just get that.
I know you did. You sat through the class. So, yes, and you'd probably get that phone call after this.
Oh, another question.
Yeah, go ahead, remote.
When would you use a dashboard versus a page in Confluence?
Ah, good question. I would use a dashboard for data that was specifically going to be used internal to the teams. And if there was any chance of it needing to go outside the organization, I would put it on a Confluence page.
Well, thank you, Michael, for the time and coming and speaking to us.
There's my information. Remember,
Any
Molly.
other questions?
Mm-hmm.